Happy New Year everyone, and welcome to a new series of Thursday Thought, thinking about the beauty around us. Beauty, it is said, is in the eye of the beholder, and today I brought along something that to me is very beautiful. It's a small, broken kangaroo, mass-produced sometime after the war in the traditional drab brown glass of the period. And yet when my grandmother died some 12 years ago, it was the possession above all others that I wanted to keep. It used to sit on the hearth of her Glasgow council house in the days of my childhood. I played with it rather a lot, which I have to admit is why it's so badly broken and mended in several places. I believe it came into my grandparents' lives through a friend who brought it back from a trip to Australia. Pretty big adventure in those days, but even my grandparents didn't seem to value it particularly. Now, I don't claim that this has any intrinsic artistic merit, but to me, to look at it, to hold it again in my hands, takes me right back to the early days of childhood, to the old coal fire, which was the only form of heating in her house, of the tin bath that would be placed in front of it for me, and only me, to bathe in, before being wrapped up in a warm towel and read a story. It reminds me of my grandparents' voices, of Christmas Eve and Santa Claus, of days of innocence, when I had to make my own fun, with nothing more than a broken brown kangaroo and a childish imagination. My parents, my wife, my children have all urged me to get rid of it, but to me, it's beautiful. Now, my thought today isn't really about kangaroos, broken or otherwise, it's really about hills and the grandeur of nature. The Cumbrian fells around us are things which are obviously beautiful, surely in anyone's book. But rather like my dull kangaroo, their beauty is not, in fact, intrinsically obvious. It was really only the romantic poets, people like Wordsworth and Ruskin, who first began to see beauty in the hills. Prior to that, they were thought of as bleak, hostile and threatening. Try to make a living out of raising livestock on them, which I have to admit I never have, and you quickly see that they're in a very different light. And analysing them from a purely scientific point of view, you would either see them as the product of massive volcanic or plate tectonic activity, or you'd see them as a catchment area for rainwater on a massive scale, which then converts kinetic energy into motion energy that causes water to cascade down into the surrounding valleys, causing mass flooding. So are they, in reality, beautiful or hostile? Well, reality is always a mixture of fact and interpretation. Science and maths alone cannot give us the whole of reality. Science measures that which is repeatable and provable. But on that basis, a kiss is simply the exchange of saliva through the juxtaposition of two orbicularis oris muscles in a state of contraction. We need to know the objective facts that science reveals to us, but we also need to interpret them in a way that makes those facts relevant to our lives. So while my daughter, studying A-level geology, might see around us an outcrop of Permo-Triassic rocks, my morning prayer book this morning told me to lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence would come my help, or to look up at the stars and count them if you are able. And it also tells me that the heavens are telling the glory of God. And while my engineering friend tells me that the hills are alive with the potential for hydroelectric power, Julie Andrews tells me that the hills are alive with the sound of music. Both of these ideas, I think, are needed, the facts and the interpretation. The facts lead us to the interpretation, and the interpretation helps us to understand the facts. The fact is that the very hills I look at and see as beautiful, which make me long to climb every mountain in order to get a different perspective on life, are also alive with amazing potential. Potential to generate power, or to grow food, or to produce minerals to manufacture glass kangaroos. As I drive around going about my daily work, it only takes one glimpse of those fells to take me out of myself and put my troubles into perspective. They remind me of something bigger than me and the problems I face. They remind me that the world is not dependent on me, or whatever it is I'm worried about at that moment, or whatever it is I'm so desperate to achieve. That all the glory of man is here today and gone tomorrow. That my worries are simple facts, only a fraction of reality. That they can be interpreted differently, and that reality is so much greater than what I can see, or than what I obsess about, or indeed anything I can even imagine. the sheer vast grandeur of creation and the wonderful potential of it all, from that magnificent array of hills that surround us down to this little broken kangaroo, are all so beautiful, and in ways that none of us can fully explain, but in which we can all fully experience. That beauty is so much greater than the things that we strive for or the troubles that we face. So why worry? Can any of us, by worrying, add a single hour to our life? And consider the lilies. They don't sow or spin, and yet not even King Solomon in all his glory was dressed like one of them. So don't worry. Life is more than food, the body's more than clothing, reality is more than fact, and you are more than the sum total of all your work or all the troubles you face. So let's lift up our eyes to the hills, or look up at the stars and count them if we can, and let the beauty around us chase away those drab post-Christmas blues.